Hello and welcome to today's webinar on conquering fear, negative thoughts and debilitating emotions. My name is Josie Thompson. I'm a multi-award-winning coach, resilience and mindset expert. I'm an author, I'm a single mum, and I'm a 2-time cancer survivor. What a mouthful. Today, I really want to talk to you about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. It's something that I have, unfortunately, had significant experience in, and that is around, conquering and facing fears, also around negative thoughts, and also about debilitating emotions and how they can really seize and get a grip on our whole experience of reality. I did try to start this live hangout just a few minutes ago and had some significant technical issues. So sincere apologies to those people who tried to connect at that time. You will obviously have received a link to watch this version now. We'll host another event, I think, soon so that we can do a live Q&A with you, which is where the richness really does come from when you have a capacity to interact with what I'm going to share with you today. So really what I'd like to do is get a handle and a definition with you around my understanding of what actually fear is, how it actually works, and how it affects us mentally, emotionally, physically, and even beyond that metaphysical space, and also link it into negative thoughts and debilitating emotions. So those of you who are familiar with my work also know that I've completed master's studies in neuroscience. Now, why would I go and do that? An accounting and finance person, head of learning and development, an executive coach, go and study the brain. Well, a few reasons. First of all, let me give you a bit of a backdrop of my experience. In 91, I was diagnosed with cancer with stage 3, and I was given 6 months to live. Now, at that time, this is 27 years ago, 6 months to live. Clearly, that was not accurate. The people around me actually believed that prognosis. In 1991, the word cancer was not as proliferated as it is these days. So I didn't know what I didn't know. What I did tune into was the energy of those people around me that were hearing what was actually happening for me. And that energy created fear for me. For me, ignorance was bliss. I heard the words, the doctor said it's malignant, it's cancer, it's stage 3, you need a second surgery. And whilst I took that information in, remembering I was 24, I'd never drank, never smoked, I was super fit, I taught aerobics part-time in those days. And this word cancer was not something I was familiar with. I knew of an aunt who had passed away of breast cancer the year before, and there was a girlfriend at BHP where I worked at the time who had passed away of bowel cancer in the February. And that was it. So it was still something that I hadn't really heard a lot about. Now, this was September 1991, and all of a sudden, all I had was a little niggle, a little bit of a pain in my throat. I went to the doctor, had an ultrasound. Thankfully, they discovered there was a growth in my right lobe of my thyroid and decided that they wouldn't do a biopsy because of my age and my demographics, and said, look, let's just remove it. So they removed it, but unfortunately what they discovered was quite alarming, particularly for them, given that they hadn't taken the safeguard of a biopsy. So what ensued was I needed to have a second surgery immediately. So I had the second surgery the next day, and I faced one of the greatest fears that a lot of people have, and that is the fear of death. Because what happened to me was I flatlined twice. So what that means was my physical body actually stopped living. And what happened was something quite extraordinary for me. I actually had what is being termed as an NDE, a near-death experience, where an aspect of me floated up at the ceiling and looked down at my physical body. So I was actually aware that that was my body on the bed below me, with nurses frantically attending to me, trying to revive me. But I was also acutely aware that I was up here looking down at my physical body. It was really strange. It was not frightening at all. It was really peaceful. It was really, really serene. And what happened was that I was quite happy just floating there watching blissfully when all of a sudden this very stern male voice came in from the left side and said to me, "It's not your time yet." And with that, I was catapulted back into my physical body. Now, that happened again the next day, and I was in and out of consciousness for about a week. And it was something that I was too frightened to talk about with anyone because I thought, no one's going to believe me anyway. And that whole experience really set me on a path to find out more about what this thing called cancer was, why people were freaking out so much. I'd soon find out, but what I could do about it. And I remember the words when the doctor actually physically said to me, "Josie, you have 6 months to live." I remember looking at him and there was no panic at all. I was like, it was more a surreal shock, really. And I looked at him and I said, "How do you know that for sure?" And the thing I know about me is I'm Italian, I'm Taurian, and I'm female. And if you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to show you I can. And there was this will within me, there was this strength within me, there was this determination within me that just appeared. And instead of fighting against what he was saying to me, I actually clung to and fought for life. And what that meant for me, it just created this unquenchable thirst and desire to understand what it was that was going on for me, to understand how I contributed to what was going on for me. But more importantly, what could I do to take charge, to take full responsibility and get me on the track to wellness and life and living life, a healthy life all over again. Now, this was completely new for me. I did get scared, but what actually scared me more was the reactions from those people around me and the way that people started treating me differently. Examples, people stopped touching me. Look, we all need physical touch, even if it's just a stroke of an arm, a hand, shake even, or even, a hug. I thrive on hugs and I love to give hugs. People stopped touching me. It was almost like they were afraid that they were going to catch something. And also when they found out it was cancer, I'd get people calling me saying, "Josie, I just found out, I'm so sorry, how long have you got?" I'm like, seriously, you don't say that when people get a diagnosis like that. Everyone goes into fear. And when fear occurs, you don't know how to talk. You don't know how to think. It really does cripple your capacity to think clearly, let alone respond in a positive and adaptive way. So what's really important now is for me to talk to you about what fear is. That was one example. I've got plenty of examples I can share with you, but perhaps I'll do that on another live streaming when I actually get it right and we can interact with one another. So let's talk about fear. Fear is something we're even afraid to talk about. We're scared about being scared, right? What is fear anyway? Are we born with fear, or is it something that we acquire through our life experience? That's my assistant, Rachel, actually just walking past at the moment. So fear is a thought. Yep, that's right. Fear is actually a thought. Fear is a story. It's a narrative that you're telling yourself and making up in your own mind about what's going on in your life experience. So is it real? Well, sometimes absolutely it's real. If you're sitting or standing on the edge of a cliff, you're up on a plane and the plane's having some technical issues, there are some very real fears around. But you'll find that a lot of the fears that we have are actually created in here. And before I decided to do this webinar, I thought about, well, what are all the different fears I can think about? And if we were actually engaging, I would be asking you, what are the typical fears that you experience from time to time. As I read through this list, I want you to think about, where did these fears derive? Where do they actually stem from? Is it something external to you? Is it something internal to you? And how much control do you have or influence over these fears? So this is a list of some of the fears that I thought about off the top of my head that a lot of us actually have from time to time. So my list was this fear of disapproval, of physical harm, of confrontation, fear of intimacy and relationships, fear of not being good enough. I know I've had that from time to time. Fear of aging, fear of being judged, fear of fear, which I've spoken about already, fear of not meeting your own or other people's expectations, fear of being seen, fear of not being seen or overlooked or ignored, fear of trying new things, fear of change, that's a big one, fear of uncertainty, that's a huge one, fear of failure, fear of success, believe it or not, fear of being alone, fear of living, yes, fear of dying, and also fear of loss, whether it's losing a loved one, including any, irrational phobias that we can have from time to time. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if I get sick? And also sometimes there's this fear of reasonless dread that we can have about the end of the world, or what feels like the end of the world coming up. But what you find is that fears often get triggered inside our minds, and they are a consequence of how we're interacting with our reality, what's going on around us. So something happens, we make up a story about it, and it gets imprinted in our minds. Worse still, or more significantly, there are experiences that we have in different and various stages of our development. Now, when these experiences occur, we only have very limited knowledge and understanding about ourselves and how life works when these experiences get imprinted. So when you think about some of the fears that you might have, and it might be about fear of speaking up, and owning my own voice and therefore being disapproved of, right? That fear could, in fact, stem back from a very young experience that you had, where you had very little knowledge about who you were in the world, what it meant to speak up, and how life actually works. And it might have been appropriate when you were little that you were seen and not heard. Maybe that was the paradigm that you grew up in, but it actually is not appropriate in your life today as a grown-up to only be seen and not heard, because it's not valid. It's no longer a valid belief. You're not that little person anymore. You are no longer governed by those influences that you had influencing you at that time. You own your life. You own your brain. You own your thoughts. So now it's time to sort of grow into that capacity of ownership and full responsibility of your life today. But you must do this gently. You must do this with kindness. You must do this with patience, and you must do this with tremendous compassion, because otherwise what can happen as you realize that, hey, I don't need to be holding on to this invisibility cloak anymore, is that you could start beating yourself up and say, why didn't I do this before? Why didn't I know this before? And, and you start this self, I know I've lost the word at the moment, but you don't need to do that anymore. You don't need it. It doesn't serve your highest good. It's not useful. What you need to do is say, well, I know that now. So how do I move into that space? And the idea of forgiveness could also come into play when it comes to fears, because some of those triggered events that have created some of the fears or negative thoughts and those debilitating emotions might have come from exchanges and experiences that you've had as a consequence or at the hand of other people. And you may not have had a choice or a voice at that time. But what happens is those experiences get imprinted in the body. So this is where the neuroscience comes in handy. So I was really fascinated by trying to understand what is it that makes people change. It's one thing to know that we have these experiences in life that we actually try to run away from. We try to suppress or push to the side and get on with life. And we start wearing masks and we try to pretend that, you know, we're okay, life's okay, and everything's okay, when in actual fact, it's not. And there were these experiences that created harm or hurt for us that we have to learn to somehow live on with. Now, some of the fears that are very real for people in these days can be around fear of job loss. You know, there's a lot of change going on in industry and in, you know, with the introduction of AI, and there's this constant set of threat that's going on. This is what happens in the brain, and this is why neuroscience is really, really important to understand, because it really can help you get back into the driver's seat of your life so you're not derailed and thrown off road when these negative thoughts or strong emotions or fears kick in. So when we're born, the brain is automatically wired for survival. It's automatically wired for being on the lookout for potential threat. So safety is the number one concern of our brain. Actually, safety is the number one concern of this whole system, which makes up our physical body. The thing is, we have three brains. We have the gut, we have the heart, and then we have this brain up here in our head. Now, the gut is very sensory. It picks up information seconds before our rational mind can make sense of what's going on in the world. The gut then sends triggers up into the heart, and the heart will respond by way of the heartbeat. So you notice that when you get triggered into fear or anxiety or threat, right, the heartbeat starts to race. But also notice that when you're actually exerting energy and exercising and doing some things that you really love, the heartbeat can also race. But what happens is the signal from the heart to the brain initially goes into the biggest primal part of the brain called the limbic system. Now, the limbic system is there from day one when we're born, and it's the major part of the brain that's connected with the circuits that are primarily focused on and needing safety. We also have another part of the brain, which is right at the front, called the prefrontal cortex. Now, that prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that engages when we're actually focused forward. I like how it's called prefrontal. It's focused forward. When we focus on what we want, we're always looking toward and we're always looking forward toward that thing that we want. When we're trying to minimize threat or fear, what we're doing is we're actually looking back. We're trying to avoid or get away from something. So here's the thing, and if this is the only thing that you get out of this webinar, I am happy. When you're focusing on what you're trying to get away from, what are you not focusing on? Right? When you're focusing on what you're trying to get away from, so from the fear, from the threat, from whatever it is that doesn't have you feel safe right now, if you're focusing on getting away from that, you are actually not focusing on what you want, right? The brain cannot do two processes like that at the same time. So while you're focusing on avoiding or minimizing threat, you're actually not focusing on creating safety. Even though you say, I don't want to be scared of X, that doesn't make you safe because you're actually focusing on the thing that's making you scared right now. So when you think about, I don't want to lose my job, the brain hears lose my job. And so what you notice is the gut, the heart, the brain starts to go, Arr! So some of those debilitating emotions start to take hold, right? When that happens, the limbic system goes into overdrive and you go into literally what's called the fight flight mode. It's also part of defend and protect and freeze. Now, when that happens, The limbic system produces a chemical called cortisol, and essentially that's the stress chemical. The first thing it does is it needs you to be on guard now, because I'm feeling stress. I'm not just feeling stressed, I'm feeling under threat. And because I'm feeling under threat, I need you to make me safe. But I'm getting you to focus on the threat. So when you're focused on the threat, that cortisol goes in and floods your prefrontal cortex. So now you can't think straight. The prefrontal cortex is that part of your brain that helps you make wise decisions, problem solve relatively easily, recall information learn new information and have insights, and put the brakes on reactionary information, right? So that part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, is your rational mind, your rational brain. The limbic brain is reactive. So it doesn't think, it reacts. And you can't think and react at the same time. So when that threat gets triggered, that cortisol gets thrown into your prefrontal cortex, so you're now on guard. It then spreads out into the rest of your brain and goes into your brain stem, down your spinal column, out into your nervous system. So now what you're going to notice is your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, your breathing changes. So instead of breathing down into your abdomen, you're going to be breathing up into your chest, like shallow breathing, like that. And you're also going to notice your blood pressure goes up and you're going to sweat a little more than usual. So if you notice all of those symptoms going on, you've got that limbic hijack and a lot of cortisol in your system. When that happens, you're not going to think straight. The other thing that happens when that's been going on for a period of time, so night after night, you're worrying about the same things over and over again. So not only the fear, but the negative thoughts and the emotions that come with it. What happens is that cortisol in the system wipes away another really important hormone that we produce in our small intestine called serotonin. Now, serotonin is what's found in antidepressants, right? When we've got lots of cortisol in the system for an extended period of time, that sense of equilibrium and okayness with life starts to dissipate because the serotonin is being swept out of the system. And so you're going to start feeling agitated a lot more than usual. You probably become more pessimistic more than usual. You probably start to feel that those things that once brought you joy no longer bring you that sense of joy because you're on this mode, right? And so the thing that we have to do is learn, how do we actually get out of that limbic hijack? How do we start to transform fear? How do we handle negative thoughts and those debilitating emotions? The first thing I want to say is this: don't fight it. Don't fight it. At the same time, don't feed it. So I've got to tell your brain what not to do first so that you understand that part of the equation. And then I'll tell you what we can do. So we don't want to fight it, because when we fight it, what are we doing? We're paying more attention to the very thing that we don't want, right? Don't fight it. Don't minimize it. Don't try to push it away. Don't try to pretend it away. It doesn't work. What you want to do is you want to name it. Name it. Don't explain it. So here's the thing. Naming it means label the emotion. What is it that you feel? I feel scared. I feel frightened. I feel anxious. I feel nervous. Whatever it is, I feel angry. I feel frustrated. Name the emotion that's present, because what happens is it goes from being a debilitating emotion, which has hold of your brain and your capacity to think. Once you name it, it goes, oh, thank goodness she knows I'm there. So you're actually creating more certainty for your entire system as well as your brain. And when you've got a little certainty, it gives you a bit of understanding. Okay, right, that makes sense that I would feel this way, right? So that's the first thing. Now, when I say don't explain it, that's rumination. If you say, I feel scared, and then you go into the storytelling about it, I feel scared because I think I'm going to lose my job. There's a lot of uncertainty at work. You know, my boss isn't keeping me informed of what's going on. And it starts to build up this whole narrative about why you should be freaking out right now. And when you try to explain the emotion, you're actually amplifying it. So don't look for the reasons why it's there. Simply acknowledge it. These emotions are there with very powerful messages. So the thing I want to say is this: name the emotion, don't explain it. Name it, don't explain it. That's the first thing. Second thing, I want you to get really curious. So when these fears come up, or negative thoughts, or debilitating emotions, you're going to name them. I feel scared. Or the negative thought is, I'm wondering if they approve of what I've just said. Or the debilitating emotion is, I can't, I'm anxious. Whatever it is, whatever that is that's coming up, just name it, right? Then I want you to breathe. The first thing we have to do is literally something that my kids tell me to do often is, Mum, calm your farm. So literally we've got to calm down. We have to get those sensory triggers into a space of greater calm, because when we've got calm, we get clarity. When we get clarity, we get confidence to navigate our way through. We get our capacity to think straight when we calm that cortisol down, okay? So there's various ways that you can actually create calm, but the first thing, it's not going to work if you're in denial or trying to suppress what's going on. So the word acceptance is really important. You need to accept that you feel scared, or you feel anxious, or you feel frightened, or whatever the emotion is that you're feeling, or whatever it is that you're thinking, right? Acceptance basically means, I'm not fighting reality. This is how I feel. This is what I'm thinking. But I'm not going to feed it. And at the same time, I'm not going to argue with it. Because if I feed it by giving it a focus and attention, or I argue with it, I'm actually therefore amplifying it. All I want to do is acknowledge that it's there. Acceptance means I stop my resistance with reality. It is what it is. I don't have to like it. Let me say that again. Acceptance means I don't have to like it, but I stop my fight with reality, willing it and wishing it to be different. It is what it is. No judgment. Suspend the judgment. It is what it is. Once you've done that, this is the important part now, is to try to calm yourself down. Now, you can do this in various ways. I made a list of different ways that's worked for me before, which obviously I can't find it right now. Journaling helps some people. Exercise helps some people. Meditation helps some people. That can be hard if you're not used to doing that. Simple breathing techniques can help, and soothing techniques that are good for you, okay? Good for you and to you. So taking drugs or alcohol or what have you, not necessarily a good long-term fix, guys, okay? You know that. It might help you temporarily feel better, but it's not necessarily at all going to be helpful for you long-term. So one of the things that works is to tune into your breath. And because we're such visual people, if you're going to do this yourself, don't do this obviously when you're driving, okay? Is to find a space where you can just close your eyes and settle down and bring your full focus and attention to the sensation of your breath as it enters your nostrils and as it comes out. And if all you do is put your focus on the breath coming in and the breath going out, you're creating a sense of mindfulness. You're bringing all of your focus and attention to this one activity. And you can say to yourself, now I'm breathing in, now I'm breathing out. Now I'm breathing in, now I'm breathing out. And so what I'm trying to do is distract my brain from getting engaged with all those freaked out thoughts and emotions, and bringing it into a space where I can start to harness capacity for greater calm, okay? And that works even in the middle of the night. If you wake up in the middle of the night, you just slowly get a grip of your focus and attention, but don't let your mind wander and start telling stories. Acknowledge what you're feeling and then say, right, now I'm breathing in, now I'm breathing out. And just do that. After 2 minutes, seriously, you'll get so bored you'll fall asleep. And see if you can extend the out breath and hold it for about 2 seconds in between. So you're breathing in, hold for 2 seconds, and you breathe out a little longer than the in breath, Okay, so that's a really nice, simple way that you can use anywhere at all to just start to calm your heart rate and your thoughts and emotions down. Okay, another thing that you can add to that is, and the reason I said before to close your eyes is because we take on so much information visually. When we close our eyes, we shut out all of that disturbance external and we take our full focus into our internal experience. So another thing that you can do with your eyes closed, but not right now because I want you to see what I'm going to do, is when you're breathing in and you're breathing out, you can do a backward counter with some stroking. So one thing that works is just stroking the arms and go really slow and deliberate. And so we start from 20 and work backwards. So think about something that stresses you out or causes a bit of panic or fear for you and get in touch with that right now, but nothing too major, right? So notice where you feel it in your body right now. And then what I want you to do is, you saw what I was doing with the stroking of the arms. I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and we're going to just count backwards from 20, and we're going to do this 20 times. And I want you to notice what happens to their sensation. So with your permission, just gently shut down your eyes and starting at your shoulders, just bring it down. We'll go for 20, breathe, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. And now I want you to just notice that sensation you had in your body and notice if it's moved at all, if it's gone from maybe a 7 to a 5 or a 4. And what I'm not suggesting is it's going to remove it completely, but what it's going to do is just help you calm down. And physical touch is a really nice way to do it. It's a very soothing way to do it. We were brought up as children often being stroked and soothed by touch. Another way to do it is to just gently touch your face and do it backwards that way. Another way is just the top of your hand. So whatever works for you. These strategies are designed to bring greater calm to the moment, which is what we need to do in order to have a greater capacity to take charge of our experience and what's going on. So that we know that fear, negative thoughts, debilitating emotions are pretty normal. It's what the brain's designed to do. The whole system is designed to keep us safe. So now I want to get into the real heavy-duty stuff, which is the most important thing. So the first thing is to acknowledge it. Don't explain it, just name it. Accept it. It's how I feel. It's how I think right now. Then try to create some calm for yourself using breath, using strokes, using your narrative, bring your full focus and attention to your breath, right? The next thing I want you to do is just connect with that thought or whatever it is that you have, the feeling, and get curious. Open your mind. It's doing the opposite of resisting it, which is what we generally tend to do, is open your mind, open your heart, and start to get curious with the feeling. So if the feeling is fear, you connect with it and go, I'm curious. I want to understand you. What is it that you want from me? What's the message underneath the fear or behind the fear? Get in touch with the little voice that's actually creating the fear. What does it want for you? What's its greater purpose? What is it trying to show you or teach you, right? What are you being invited to learn? And it might be you need to speak up, or it might be you need to ask a question to find out what's really going on. It might be find out more information. You're not sure what it is until you actually very gently inquire underneath. And there's much, much deeper work we can do with this. But obviously, in this very short webinar, there's only so much I can cover with you. If you want to know more, I'm actually going to be doing live workshops around these and similar themes that you can find out more about. I'll make sure that I put the links in the comments for you when I've completed the recording here. So I've given you some ideas about how you can handle fear, how you can handle negative thoughts and debilitating emotions simply by acknowledging their presence. Don't fight them. They're there to keep you safe. They're there with a hidden message that we can only hear when we've calmed ourselves down and we get curious to understanding more about what it's all about. All of these sensations are designed for your safety and to minimize threat. But we have to understand it. And the only way we can understand it is to open our sense of awareness and appreciation that all of these sensations have a hidden message. Let's get curious about what that hidden message is. And then let's take responsibility for taking charge to create a better experience for ourselves. And I want to share with you a little metaphor or a story that I share a lot on stage. It's about two wolves, and it actually demonstrates how our thinking affects our reality. So the story goes like this. There's a Cherokee Indian sitting around a campfire with his grandson, teaching him the old Indian ways. And he says to his grandson, "Son, there's this terrible battle going on inside my brain, and it's between two wolves. One's a good wolf. It's kind, it's considerate, it's compassionate, it's thoughtful. And the other wolf is a bad wolf. It's angry, it's jealous, it's spiteful, it's really mean. And it's always going on, you know." And the grandson looks at the grandfather and he says, "Well, which wolf will win?" And the grandfather says, "The one you feed." And this goes with our thinking as well. We have those thoughts that really want to keep us safe, but have us thinking about the threat, what we're scared of, what we're trying to avoid, what we don't want to repeat, right? What we don't want. And then we have the good wolf or the good thoughts that have us focus towards what we want. So we're looking through the windscreen, if you like. Whereas the fears have us looking back, you know, in the rearview mirror. We can't look back and forward at the same time. My suggestion is this. The bad wolf thoughts, they're actually not bad. They're actually designed to keep us safe and to minimize threat. What we want to do, though, is we don't want to live there. We want to acknowledge them and say, "Thank you for reminding me how important that is to me. Now, what is it that I do want?" And then we take adaptive, positive action and steps towards attaining that need that we have. So I hope that makes sense. Instead of focusing on what you don't want, which is to get away from a thought or a feeling or an emotion, we want to work towards and fight for the thing that we actually want. And the first port of call, I would always say, would be calm. Because when you're calm, you're clear of mind. When you're clear of mind, you can make wise decisions. You can problem solve more readily. You can remember stuff that you know. You can also be open to insights and new ways of moving forward. And you're able to put the brakes on those urges to react. Just because you feel like you want to run away doesn't mean you need to run away. Just because you really want to tell that person where to go, you don't actually need to do that way. Okay? But that capacity for self-regulation is only really available when you're able to calm that reactivity part of our bodies and our brains down. There's one more story that I'd really love to share with you, and I'm going to include it in the handout, which will be available with this webinar. And it's a story about the carrot, the egg, and the coffee bean. And with your permission, I'd really love to read it to you. It goes like this. A young woman went to her mother and told her about her life and how things were so hard for her. She didn't know how she was going to make it and wanted to give up. She was tired and fighting and struggling. It seemed as one problem was solved, a new one arose. Her mother took her to the kitchen. She filled 3 pots with water. In the first, she placed carrots. In the second, she placed an egg. And in the third, she placed some coffee beans. She let them sit and boil without saying a word. In about 20 minutes, she turned off the burners. She fished the carrots out and placed them in a bowl. She pulled the eggs out and placed them in a bowl. And she ladled the coffee into a bowl. Turning to her daughter, she asked, "Tell me what you see." And the daughter said, "Carrots, eggs, and coffee." She brought her closer and asked her to feel the carrots. She did, and she noted that they were soft. She then asked her to take an egg and break it. After pulling off the shell, she observed a hard-boiled egg. Finally, she asked her to sip the coffee. The daughter smiled as she tasted its rich aroma. The daughter then asked, "Well, what's the point, Mother?" Her mother explained that each of these objects had faced the same adversity, the boiling water, but each had reacted differently. The carrot went in strong and hard and unrelenting. However, after being subjected to the boiling water, it softened and became weak. The egg had been fragile. Its thin outer shell had protected its liquid interior, but after being through the boiling water, its inside became hardened. The ground coffee beans were unique though. After they were in the boiling water, they had changed the water. "Which are you?" she asked her daughter. "When adversity knocks on your door, how do you respond? Are you a carrot, an egg, or a coffee bean? Think of this. Well, which am I? Am I the carrot that seems strong, but with pain and adversity, do I wilt and become soft and lose my strength? Am I the egg that starts with a malleable heart, but changes with the heat? Did I have a fluid spirit, but after death or a breakup or a financial hardship or some other trial, have I become hardened and stiff? Does my shell look the same, but on the inside, am I bitter and tough with a stiff spirit and hardened heart? Or am I like a coffee bean? The bean actually changes the hot water, the very circumstance that actually created the pain. When the water gets hot, it releases the fragrance and flavor. If you are like the bean, then when things are at their worst, you actually get better and you change the situation around you. When the hours are the darkest and the trials are the greatest, do you elevate to another level? How do you handle adversity? Are you a carrot, an egg, or a coffee bean? Things are never, ever as bad as they seem. Maintaining our perspective on things helps us overcome adversity, even if we struggle. So, as Joan Marks once said, when it rains, it pours. Maybe the art of life is to convert tough times to great experiences. We can choose to hate the rain or dance in it. I know what I'd prefer. So let's choose to dance in the rain, or in this case, drink the coffee. So I hope you enjoyed that little story. It's something that I often reflect on, and I actually say to people, experiences in life can either make you bitter or better, and you get to decide. Because here's the thing, pain in life is inevitable. That's how we get to learn and grow. Suffering is optional. We do that to ourselves, right? And resistance is a big part of that. However, we have choice. So what we can do is actually transform. We can learn, we can grow, we can strengthen, and we can acquire wisdom. And that's what I hope you've gained today in joining me on this webinar about conquering fear, negative thoughts, and debilitating emotions. If you want to know more about working with me or the different things that I have to offer that can extend your learning in this capacity, check out my website at josiethompson.com. I've also got a membership group called Coffee, Tea and Josie, and every single week we're exploring different life themes like change, mindset, resilience, and a host of other topics where we really deep dive into these different topics and actually look to acquire tools and strategies to live a better life. I also have online training programs that you can check out. One of them is You Are Not Your Brain, which is a program that I created with Dr. Jeffrey Schwartz, who's the leading neuroscientist in the world on obsessive compulsive disorder and neuroplasticity. So if you're wanting to change bad habits and unhealthy thinking and really take control of your life, that's a wonderful program that you can check out. And I'll also include that link there, as well as my weekend half-day workshops. I hope you have enjoyed this webinar today. Apologies again for the technical hiccups with the previous attempt. Leave your comments and feedback below. I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, remember, it's not what happens to you that defines you. It's how you respond that counts. Shine on.